Hi, I'm Pat and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to replace some pulleys and the accessory belt here on the 2006 Porsche Cayman S. If you're new to the channel, please click on the subscribe button and ring that bell for notifications. I like producing cool car content and you're not going to want to miss it. So my Porsche Cayman S here is 16 years old and it is due for a few parts that need to be replaced, and that includes the idler pulleys. See, the idler pulleys in this car are made of plastic, and with all the heating and cooling, they become brittle. And if they shatter, well, you're going to lose accessories. So what I decided to do is pick up this kit, and you can find a link in the description for your convenience. This is the Continental kit, which replaces the idler pulleys as well as the tensioner, so I'm going to be in better shape in order to prevent a problem down the road. So before we get started, let's just take a look and see what's in here in the box, right? We got the idlers. Some of these actually have a zip tie through them, and that's because you don't want to have this assembly come apart. It's much easier to replace this as an assembly because there's individual parts in here that could come apart. And we also have the tensioner here, as well as the belt. And there are a few other things here. New bolt. This is a bolt within a bolt. Nah. We'll find out where all these parts go once we get inside the car. There's really no instructions in this kit, so I'm going to have to be removing things and replacing things as I go. Let's start to take the car apart next. All right, first thing I want to do is I want to take these two rubber pieces that are at the ends of this bar here behind the seats, and I want to pop them up. And I could use a plastic trim tool and move those out of the way. And then underneath those are two bolts. They're a 12-point hex bolt, but I'm using a 6mm 6-point hex, and I can go ahead and loosen these two bolts. And once I get these out of the way, I can pull the bar out of the way. All right, now that I have those bolts out of the way, I can go ahead and get this bar out of the way. Now there's one more bolt right here. It's very small. This is a T20, and I can go ahead and loosen this up, and this allows me to get the rest of this plastic trim uninstalled. All right, now that I've removed that bar, I can go ahead and start to lift up on this plastic trim piece, because there's some metal clips on it that this is what will retain the very top of this carpet section, and that's what we got to get out next. Okay, I have this up high enough now that I can actually start to pull the carpet out. So I just want to grab it down below and to the side and start pulling straight out. And this will allow me to get as much of it out as I can. Now there's going to be a little bit of a hang up here in the middle, because I do have the armrest here as well as this section at the top. But if I could just pull this out from underneath the plastic piece, and there is a metal hook that's holding this in place, then I can move that straight out and pull it straight up and remove it from the car. Now this exposes this metal plate that we can remove, and it's just a 10mm socket to remove the bolts and the two nuts here at the middle. So I'll do that next. Well, this seal is pretty good, so I'm using a trim tool to help separate the cover from the body. There we go. All right, so that's the opposite side of what the cover looks like, and you can see all the tabs here that hold the bolts in place, and then the two places for the two screws. And now we have access to the actual serpentine belt. All right, so I have a 24mm socket here, and I'm going to actually turn it in the tightening direction once I get it on the tensioner here. Okay, so I can tighten. Then when I tighten, I can of course loosen the belt. So the belt will slip right off of one of those idlers. I already took a picture of this, although I also have a video running, so that I can see exactly how I need to put the belt back on. So at this point, as long as I get the belt off, and it's kind of stuck there on a bolt for a pulley, and get it off that bolt right there. There we go. Now I should just be able to undo the belt from all the accessories and all the pulleys, and this will give me access to the pulleys. Next, I'm going to remove the bolt for the top pulley, and I'm going to use an E14 Torx bit. Now, I'm actually doing this from the passenger side because it's going to be quite a lot easier to do it from over here than the driver's side. I'm just going to slip a pipe over top of the socket here, and then that way I can actually get a better grip. There we go. Starts to loosen so much easier. Now, this is a very long bolt, and by long I mean it's going to impact this bulkhead that's right here. So as I'm backing this out, I may have to move these shift cables out of the way, but I also want to make sure that as it comes out of the engine block, I keep this assembly together, because the pulley and these metal washers that are on each side, well, they can just fall off, and there's a spacer back there as well. I don't want them to go anywhere, so I'm just keeping my fingers on them as I'm backing this out. I'm also going to push the shift cables out of the way here so that it's easier to remove the pulley. And once my driver starts to get in the way, I'll just put the socket on here and back it out by hand. There we are, everything's loose. As I'm coming out here, as I said before, this is a very long bolt, so it's going to push the pulley in while I allow the bolt to elongate out, and I'm going to try to tilt the bolt up so that I can get it past this bulkhead. Actually, I might need to climb in the car and get two hands on this. So let me give you a closer idea of what's happening here. So this bolt that's going into the block there is longer than what will allow me to get out. So I actually got to bend this piece of metal as I try to pull this out, and so I don't lose all the components as well. So we'll be doing this off camera, but ultimately I want to try to get this up as high as I can and try to bend this metal away at the same time. Okay, it's possible. You do need two hands to pull this metal piece out, and then this will slowly work its way over the top. And then once you get it there, you can just wiggle it out, and out comes the entire assembly. I'm going to go ahead and set this aside and work on the next pulley, which is down there. Next, we're going to use an E12 socket, and we're going to stick this on the lower pulley here. And same deal, I'm just going to put a pipe over this just to make it easy for me to loosen this pulley. Doesn't really require too much force, but that way I'm not smashing knuckles on pieces of car. And this pulley won't be as hard to remove because there's really nothing in the way, and this bolt should be a whole lot shorter. But we also want to make sure that we don't lose all the components that are behind it. So I'm keeping pressure on that while I'm backing it out. There we go. So let's compare what we removed from the car to what we got in the kit. So this top one has the long bolt, has a larger hole in it, and if you notice, that washer is the same as that washer. So that's the one we need to install on the top. This one with the smaller and shorter has a different kind of washer on it. See, it's totally different. It's smaller, and that one's smaller as well. So this one goes in the bottom, and this one goes in the top. We want to keep these assembled with the zip ties until we're ready to go ahead and put the bolts through them. That way they don't fall apart. Next, let's take the tensioner pulley off, and that's this guy that's going to replace it. All right, so now what's left is this idler. In the back of the idler is a 15 millimeter bolt. So I have a 15 millimeter wrench here. I'm going to stick that on here, and I'm going to allow it to dangle down on or near the drive pulley. And then that way, as I'm loosening the other part, the front part of this pulley with that 24 millimeter, I'm going to do that from the driver's side. This is going to go ahead and stop that bolt in the back from spinning. All right, I'm going to stick my 24 millimeter in here and start to crank this down so that I can remove this pulley. Oop. Slipped off the bolt in the back there. Slipped again. Can't really get a box wrench on this, so it's kind of delicate, kind of touchy. As I'm backing this out, I'm running out of clearance, so that's always fun. This is quite an interesting assembly. I don't know why that had to be a bolt and a nut type of a situation here. I don't understand why they engineered it this way. All right, so the situation now is kind of sketchy. So I can't get that socket on this anymore, so I'm going to end up using an adjustable wrench. And the reason is because I don't have a wrench big enough to fit on this thing. Well, I stick the other one behind and then see if I can get this off this way, because the socket won't clear the car. Oh boy. All right, so I'm actually been working on this for a while now. I think I'm getting kind of close. I'm working on it from the passenger side over here, simply because I can move in a down direction, so it doesn't require as much force to turn this wrench. And I have the other wrench on the bolt sandwiched in behind everything. So we're getting close to the end here, I think. It's starting to come off pretty easy. Once again, we don't want to lose any of these components, so I want to make sure we keep our hands attached to everything. I don't want anything falling down and have to remove the underbody panel on the car to get to it. Oh, that's fine. Come off now. There we go. And get that bolt out of there. Maybe. No. Okay. So that bolt isn't coming out of there. Because it's going up against the engine block. Interesting. Very, very interesting. And of course the tensioner that came with the kit doesn't look anything like this. So I'm wondering if there's something else behind here where the tensioner is. And that's a possibility. At this point I'm just going to reuse this bolt because I don't have the clearance to get it out of there. All right, so let's take a closer look at this kit now. So this is our pulley for the idler. And this is the pulley that came off the car. So we have a washer here, this big nut, and on the other side we have a washer and a spacer. So we could take a washer and a spacer on one side, flip it over, and then we'll put a washer and the big nut here through the middle. Just like that. Yep. So this is going to go on towards the engine side, and this will go on towards the outside. So let's take this assembly and place it over that bolt. So I checked the forums, and most people leave this old bolt intact. This arm that's here goes into a piece of metal, and on the other side is where the tensioner's at. So if I wanted to replace the tensioner, I'd have to disassemble a lot of things on the top of the engine to get to it. The tensioner really isn't the problem. The plastic pulleys are the problem. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this on this bolt and tighten it down. I can also add a little bit of Loctite to it after I get it started, the removable Loctite. That way it will not come easily loose. All right, so I'm just going to add a little bit of Loctite to the top of this bolt, the blue stuff. There we go. So now I'm actually going to tighten it down and torque it to 44 pounds-feet. There's 44. Next, we're going to go ahead and install the bottom pulley, and of course, put some blue Loctite on it, and we're going to torque this to 17 pound-feet. So I'm just starting it by hand. It's going in pretty easy, just as easy as it came out. And as we get here close to, there we are, almost full insertion, we're going to go ahead and torque this one down as well. Awesome. Okay, for the top pulley here, this is going to be to 34 pounds-feet, but this is the tricky one. If you remember, it was difficult to get out. It's going to be difficult to get in. So I'm going to slide the pulley components in beyond the shift cables, and then I'm going to start pulling out on the metal bulkhead to see if I can get the bolt over it. Oh my goodness. Whew. All right. They sure don't make it easy. Okay. So, I'm not lined up with what I need to be lined up with. There we are. Okay, so it's got to go in square and straight. Get it started by hand here and then torque it down to 34 pounds-feet. $34. All right, and I did put some blue Loctite on that as well. So we shouldn't have any problems once I get the tool off of here. Okay, so our next step is going to be to go ahead and install the belt, which means we've got to loosen up the tensioner. So we're going to bring it back in the opposite direction that we tightened it in. And actually, no, we're going to actually move it downward. So we're going to act like we're tightening it, and it should be good to go at that point. But all of our pulleys here do move, and all the other pulleys here, the accessory pulleys, move as well. Just making sure there's nothing odd about any of those, and there isn't. So that's good to go. Everything looks good. We'll go ahead and get this new belt out. Okay, so I'm going to go down underneath the water pump on my side first. Make sure I'm all the way around that. Okay, then I can go up over the alternator. And get all this in here first. Make life a little bit easier. And we'll get back on the pulley. Make sure we're all the way on. Over the alternator. Excellent. And we're going to go down under this idler. And up over the air conditioning. Okay. Then we're going to come down around the crank pulley, and then we would come up over the tensioner. So I want to make sure everything's in its groove because this is going to be tight fit. All right, so now that we have everything in the car, we'll put me in the car and then put everything back together. I'm just lining everything up on these studs. I'll put these nuts in and then put the bolts in. And then after that, we can start the car up and make sure everything's working okay. Okay, we got everything buttoned up back here. Moment of truth. Let's see what happens. Everything looks like it's working. No weird sounds. All right, good to go. So I've gone ahead and buttoned everything back up here, put the carpet all in place, and we are good to go. Did test start the car. I'm actually going to leave it run here for a little bit now that I know that this is all buttoned up, and just want to make sure everything's going to run perfectly fine. Got the garage door open here so we don't get asphyxiated. So this concludes today's video. If you like today's video, please be sure to give me a big thumbs up. I do want to address that one part that I did not put in, and that is the tensioner. That's at the top of the motor, and I heard that that takes several hours to replace. Mine is working just fine. I don't feel I need to change it out right now, but if I'm ever doing service at the top of the motor, I'll go ahead and replace it at that time. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please click on the subscribe button and ring that bell for notifications. I like producing cool car content. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and happy motoring. This is a nice straight